Hey guys, and welcome back to Zawinul Review and Reactions. One of the things I think that makes Zawinul so interesting is that he had such an interesting musical background. He played accordion as a kid in the Austrian countryside. Then he went and studied classical music and composition when he was older, and then, of course, came to America and learned jazz. Um, and it's interesting to see how all these streams sort of fit together. And I think looking at his first solo album from 1970, just called Zawinul, will give us some insight. Now, I don't know how well versed you are in his compositions, but the first track on this one is Dr. Honoris Causa, and now that's a strange name, but it's related to the fact that Herbie Hancock was rewarded an honorary doctorate degree. So this is really a piece for him. But there's some surprises on this album. There's, of course, In a Silent Way, which Zawinul wrote and recorded for Miles Davis first, but this is a different version. Wayne Shorter is only on one of these tracks. There's also a trumpet here. And without any further ado, let's just get into a little bit of. Oh, I do want to mention there is an ambient song almost on this album, which is quite interesting. But let's get into Dr. Honoris Causa and see how it sounds here. And he uses a soprano sax here, even though there's no Wayne Shorter. Now, some of you may recognize that line. He reuses that na 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 on his Gypsy album from Stories of the Danube. But yeah, it's interesting. This Savino book discusses the song a little bit. It says the music is written out well into the piece with careful ensemble playing by the three wind instruments, accompanying lots of textural percussion and electric piano work, with no solo for Joe or Herbie. I guess he is actually on this album as well, and a heavy bottom provided by the two basses. The song also features one of those themes by Zawinul which would later be identified: regular, bluesy, faintly Eastern sounding, and memorable. I would definitely agree with all that. So you can hear how this is not really a traditional jazz structure. It's it's a completely different type of song. It's not just a regular song form. And Joe and Wayne were both getting away from just the AABB verse, solo, uh, verse, just the standard musical structure. Um, so now let's hear the second piece, His Last Journey. Now, if you're curious what instruments is on here, it's music for two electric pianos, flute, trumpet, soprano saxophone, two contrabasses, and percussion. Um, you get this, you see it in the cover album, you see it in Zawinul's eyes sometimes, sort of this sadness, this contemplative kind of mood music. And that's not what you would think when you hear Birdland or when you hear some of the later wild stuff. But that side of Zawinul was very much there, and it came out strongly on this album. Even In a Silent Way was recorded just in a candlelit studio, just to get the mood just right. Um, and you'll hear it even more on the last track. Piano in there. It just hits you. Like, you don't think it's an interesting song in some ways, but then when that comes in, that melody line, you realize it's something special. Ella Fitzgerald, I believe it was, told Zawinul that he listened to music as if he were a blind man. That's how in tune he was to sounds. And it gets a little more dissonant near the end of the piece. So I mean, yeah, is it my favorite Zawinul? Definitely not. But is it good music? Yeah. And is it interesting music? For sure. Um, you wouldn't have expected some of these things. And then double image, the next one. The liner notes say about this one is a concept of what man thinks he is as opposed to what he really is. So just thinking about how there's two sides to people. Sounds a little bit like an intro that he might use to one of his later fast pieces with the Syndicate. Incidentally, he did most of all this production himself. His producer said that he just helped him get everything recorded. We don't have a lot of information about where he got some of the sounds and how he maybe slowed down some sounds to get some of the percussions and things. Now, this is not one of my favorite tracks. It's too dissonant for me. I don't really like the direction of it, honestly. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but interesting. Now back then, Zawinul was still, I think he was more of an intellectual. I don't think he was really quite in touch with his folk music side. And, because this is not exactly toe tap music right here. Let's skip ahead a little bit in double image. And it goes on kind of like this for about 10 minutes. Not a big fan of this one. Now, in a silent way, we might come back and do a separate review about that. And then you've got Arrival in New York, the ambient piece. This features two slowed down tapes of two horns and steamboat or perhaps train bell ringings. This came to him about just his impressions of what it was like when he first arrived in New York. Near the end, you get a semblance of a melody. That horn, that steamboat, is your instrument for now. turn into a song right there at the end, which it's almost a little comical, but it's a clever song, and I think it's a really interesting song. So we'll come back to In a Silent Way. We'll maybe go back and hear a little bit of some earlier stuff that we didn't get to yet, but we got to get into a weather report. It's been 2 years since I started this channel, and you guys don't even know the origin story of weather report. And I will tell you, it partially involves the Celtics great Bill Russell. He is a part of the weather report story. So we'll get into that next time. And thanks for watching. I doubt many people made it all the way to the end. But if you did, you're either a real Zawinul fan or you're really bored during this quarantine. So I will catch you guys next time.